Podcast. 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 Yeah, welcome to another episode of the Racer X Exhaust Podcast, brought to you by Yoshimura. I am Jason Weigandt, and Yoshimura has over 6 decades of research and development into their 4-stroke exhaust systems for your machine. So go to yoshimura-rd.com for information on the exhaust systems, and also yoshimuracycling.com for information on the new Chaleo flat pedal, which can work on a variety of bicycles, good for mountain biking, good for BMX, and apparently even good for road bikes. And you know who uses a Yoshimura exhaust system on his motorcycle? Ken Roczen does, and he will be one of the interviews on this episode of the podcast, going to try to get perspective from the top and bottom. First, Ken Roczen, an elite factory rider battling for the championship. I'll get his opinions on Supercross's return, and also Cade Clason, so we can get the privateer perspective. Both of these guys and every other rider will have to race 7 races in about a 3-week span, so they'll race twice a week, Sundays and Wednesdays. You probably heard about that. It will start May 31st. It will end June 21st, and everyone will essentially have to stay in the state of Utah. That's where all the races are taking place, at Rice-Eccles Stadium in Utah. And you could leave the state, but the problem is whenever you come back into the state, you have to be tested for COVID-19 48 hours before the event. And since we're racing on Sundays and Wednesdays, there's really not enough time to leave, come back, get tested, wait 48 hours, and race again. So essentially everyone's on a 3-week Utah lockdown, at least if you make your living as a racer, which is what Roczen and Clason do. But if you talk to these guys, and again, I try to get the full perspective, this is pretty good, really, for them. The big point that I don't want to lose at all, and I mentioned this on the previous episode of this show, the big point is everyone quickly learned that if the racing stops, the pay stops as well. It either stopped already for some of them, or it was going to stop for all of them. Racing teams have never had to worry about finding races to go to preserve their existence. First time we've ever really dealt with that. But it hit hard, and I know there were a lot of people scared, a lot of checks already not coming in, or people furloughed, or if you don't get these races in, then the checks will stop. Racing is weird like that. Everyone knows, I think, if Major League Baseball ends up not playing this year, or the NBA ends up not playing this year, they'll be back next year. But I think everyone in racing got really scared that the entire thing could get written off the books if it doesn't get back. And that would even be the best case scenario. That would mean we didn't race this year, but we got back next year. But I think even beyond that, just not getting checks for this year wouldn't be good either, right? So the riders are happy to do this. 2 days a week, not perfect. Every race in Utah, not perfect. It was not the original plan, but everyone is at least going to somewhat get back to their regular way of living. So they're willing to take on sacrifices that they normally wouldn't. I think everyone got a lot of perspective from this. So to hear from Roczen and Clason, they're fine really with the deal. And even if they can't find a way to ride or practice in between these races during the week, they're even fine with that. Okay, so that topic is handled. The next one is, how will it affect the racing? Well, I'll tell you, I think a lot of people were worried that Roczen wasn't pumped on this. Remember, he was the first guy to not do public autograph sessions kind of before we even knew about social distancing. He's mentioned before, compromised immune system, got to worry about COVID-19. And then when there was a plan of the racing coming back, and Cooper Webb had his little rant on Instagram saying, I want to go racing, everyone immediately said, well, who's he talking about? Who's he complaining about? It must be Roczen. So I didn't know where Roczen would be with his opinion on this. That's why he's the first guy I wanted to interview, and he said all the right things here. He is motivated. He's fired up. He wants this championship. He's pumped over the opportunity to go for it. He's not scared. So that's awesome, which means we can now take the topic soon from the logistics and what this means and how it's all going to work to the next topic, which is way more fun, which is who's going to succeed? Who's going to excel? Who's going to win the races? Who's going to score the points? Who's going to win the titles? That's the stuff we love to talk about, and I'm pumped on it. If Roczen's pumped, you know Eli Tomac is. We have an interview with him today on RacerX Online. Tomac wants to race this out. He doesn't want to win a title with an asterisk attached. So if you've got the main title combatants, Webb's on board, Tomac's on board, now we know Roczen's on board, a ton of guys coming back from injuries. Zach Osborne will be back. Adam Cianciarulo will be back. A ton of guys weren't injured and were still in it. I mean, go down the list. Barsha, Plessinger, Anderson, Wilson, tons of dudes. I think the only guy not coming back is Marvin Musquin, but we're going to have a deep field, maybe a little bit of that round one. Guys are believing in themselves a little more than they do as the season starts to move on. Going in the opener, everyone thinks they have a shot. It really lines up beautifully when you consider the field is deep, the field is healthy, there's a lot of weird unknowns, and the championship is literally hanging in the balance. It's right there, 3 points between Roczen and Tomac, and I think everybody knows Cooper Webb, 29 points down, 7 races, weirdo scenario. You don't count him out of the championship either because he's the salty type, right? You would think these weird scenarios play well for him. How exciting is that? Now we know the riders are on board, the teams are on board, Feld's going to make it happen, and we get to do what we really like, which is watch these guys battle it out. This is a playoff format without the complaints of it being an actual playoff format. It just so happened that Roczen and Tomac practically are tied in points with 7 races to go. And then I'll give you another one. As soon as this plan was announced to race in Salt Lake City, I get an email from an old agent in the business who says, Eli Tomac lives at Elevation, Salt Lake City, Elevation. Congratulations, your new champion, Eli Tomac. Good point. Good point. Certainly Elevation working in Tomac's favor here. But Ken Roczen, his wife's family lives in Utah. He could probably find a way to maybe find a track to ride and test if he needed to, better than anyone else, because her family owns land there. I know they've got a Supercross track somewhere there in Utah. Sadly, that's where his trainer, Blake Savage, got hurt. They were riding on a Supercross track. Is it full-blown? I don't know, but they could probably make it that way, or even if it wasn't, it's an advantage on Roczen's side. And I'll throw 2 other things on Roczen's side here. We know that Roczen is kind of the loose program guy, more so than most guys at his level. So I feel like if things are wild and woolly, he can just wing it and show up and still think he's going to win, more than other guys who are like, oh, man, I didn't get my normal weekend. I think Roczen's better at dealing with that than others. And as he says in this interview, he traditionally has always been a guy that starts a championship strong. The second half of some championships haven't been as good. So he's essentially now getting 2 first halves of championships instead of a second half. So I don't know. Is it advantage Tomac? Is it advantage Roczen? That's what makes it so cool. We don't know what's going to happen. We just know these guys are going to come out slugging because this is the title that they've wanted to win their whole lives. And if you're Roczen and Tomac, lives, careers, everything else will be defined potentially on how they perform from May 31st to June 21st. No pressure. All right, here's Ken Roczen.
Dude, you've been busy. I've seen you in the Red Bull virtual racing. We saw you on NBC Sports last week. You've been doing a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of it, but I finally said, I'm like, hey, the Corona times are over, back racing. Like, no more. I'm good now. I got to go back to my normal routine.
Yeah, that was my first thing. I mean, when I talked to you a couple times, like months ago, I'm like, hey, what else are you going to do? But now are you like in a rush? Like, do you feel extra busy to try to make this happen in 2 weeks?
No. Okay. I've been riding Supercross for a while and stuff, so I'm in a good spot right now. I was just joking, but you know, when you have the time and we're not racing and we don't really know, there's a lot of requests and whatnot, and I try to do as many as possible. But having said that, now it does come down to a little bit of crunch time. So just trying to focus on my thing, daily routine, just trying to keep the stress factors low and everything, because any little bit of aggravation and whatnot, they all contribute to the stress and everything. So I'm just trying to keep it easy. And
were you okay? You as a racer, you probably heard about the May 31st thing before the fans did, before they made it official. So you maybe knew it was coming. But how do you feel about it? Are you pumped to like, okay, we're going to try to ramp this back up, or would you prefer it to have more lead time? It's totally different than normal racing. We're all in one state the whole time. How do you feel about all this?
Yes, I did hear about it. Obviously, they were going to try for that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I did get, I guess, I wouldn't say confirmation, but they said it was going to look really good for May 31st.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the same for everybody. Is it ideal situation? It's not about not having enough time to get ready. I'm ready. But it's going to be weird for everybody. There's no track walk, things like that. It's the same for everybody. Am I pumped about it? I'm trying to make the best out of it. I don't want to kind of negative slate or anything, but I think we have a plan actually that I'm pretty pumped, because normally that takes, my agent or my wife take care of all that stuff, but I've been actually pretty involved in trying to get a plan set up with everything, because it's going to be a little bit different being at altitude and then and whatnot. So we're definitely making the best out of it, and got my teammate, obviously JB, involved, and we have a super good plan set up, and I think it's going to be a fun 3 weeks for sure.
Well, a lot of people probably don't realize this, but you have some Utah connections. Your wife and her whole family there is from Utah. So is it kind of like, of all places to pick, did it kind of work out a little bit for you?
Yeah, it's like home racing, of course.
Yeah.
No, because we spend a lot of time, obviously, at Southern Utah, but it doesn't matter. I feel like I love going to Utah, first off, and I feel like I have a lot of fans, especially in Southern Utah, St. George area. That's where I spend a lot of time, so I've gotten to know a lot of people and whatnot. So I'm super excited to be racing in Utah for the remainder of the season, and hopefully, getting cheered on from family and fans there in Utah. So I'm excited. I haven't been in Salt Lake in a long time. I think the last time I went was 2013, I think, because then 17 I was hurt. I don't really remember when the last time was that they actually did race there.
Yeah.
But we're excited. I love going to Utah.
You can't really leave the state with the testing and everything we're going to have to do, but they said you can go anywhere you want in the state. So are you tempted to go and build a track, or maybe you have one there? Are you going to try to ride between races, or do you not have that figured out yet?
I'm not going to ride between Monday and Wednesday. There's not really time. You only have 2 days in between. I think since we are at altitude, things are going to be a little bit different, and focus is going to be on recovery and just kind of staying loose and happy. And then from Wednesday to Sunday, obviously there's going to be a little bit more of a gap. And I think everybody's probably doing the same thing, but we were planning on riding somewhere on Friday. And I wasn't even too worried about whether that was Supercross or not. I think it was just important to be on the bike, do some start, do a little bit of play riding, because I have done my work. I feel like I'm in a good position. And during those 3 weeks of time, I'm not going to be focusing on trying to gain any fitness or anything. I think it's all about feeling good and trying to see. I'm just very interested to see with the altitude being there for such a long period of time. It'll be interesting, but like I said, I think I have a lot of good people around me with Blake, and then some people from Red Bull. We have a lot of connections around to try and gather as much information as possible to make the best out of the state while we're there.
When you hang out in Southern Utah, where your wife's family is that altitude? Do you have experience with that, or is it different?
Yeah, a little bit, definitely. Yeah, I'm not 100%. I think it's probably about, I think we checked it out the other, I think it's 2,700 feet or something like that. So not as high as St. George or even Park City for that matter. Park City is really high, but enough to where when you go on bike rides, you notice it for sure.
You were one of the first, we talked about this a bunch of times, when at Daytona you're like, hey man, I'm going to chill on the public autograph signings. That's before we even knew how bad this was. Then it just turned out you were in the same boat as everybody else. So I think when fans heard Supercross was coming back, people started speculating, I bet you Roczen doesn't even want to do this. Can you comment on that? Did you feel that way? Were you worried at all, or are you worried at all?
Well, at one point, of course I was worried, because it's a weird, you have these different states, like in Florida right now.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of starting to become back normal.
Yeah.
Restaurants are somewhat open. You don't see a whole lot of people in restaurants yet, but the is now California is, I was just talking to a friend earlier, I guess still only takeout, it's still kind of locked down. It's just weird. I'm just unsure about the whole situation, and maybe is there a second wave or not. I just didn't want anything to be rushed, but of course I'm excited to go racing no matter what. It's been a long time, and I want to get this championship done before any other race is scheduled. So my priority was trying to get this Supercross season continued before doing any other races.
Perfect. Yeah. No, because I think there were people speculating that you wanted to wait 6 more months, but that's clearly not the case.
No, absolutely not. That's obvious. The year's over in 6 months, so we the whole thing. We're just all in a unique situation, because the MXGP guys, all they do is ride outdoors, or the NBA, all they do is play basketball. We do have two different things that we got going on, Supercross and Motocross. So I didn't want Supercross to be scratched, then start outdoors, and then go Supercross. I think that would have been, of course, again, same for everybody, but we're still trying to make it as comfortable as possible, because no matter what, once we do start racing again, it's going to be a long, I would say, couple of years, because we start now. If it goes into outdoors, and then we race till October, late October, then we have November, December. Some people do manufacturer changes. Some people have new bikes. Like, we have a new bike coming up. Mm-hmm. So we have to get testing time. Like, everything is all flipped upside down right now.
Yeah. So once you're going, I hope you got your rest in, right? Because it's going to be wide open.
Yep.
Well, it's good to hear that you're excited about racing. And look, you have a real reason to be. You're 3 points behind in the championship. So if anyone has an incentive to want to get out there and score points and make it happen, I mean, here it is. You've got your chance. You got 7 races to make it happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about it, too, is normally 7 races are drug out over, well, if you have an off weekend in there.
Oh, yeah.
8 weeks, right? Now it's going to be boom, 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 boom. And I think it's important to get a good rhythm in. I'm excited. Like, we're in a good position. So is Eli and even Cooper, nothing's lost yet, but I'm all in, man. Like, I want this so bad. Like, I keep telling my wife about it and everything. So I am putting everything in motion on my side to just leave nothing on the table. I don't want to go there and just, I'll drink some water. Like, I don't want to just, I'm like, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm like hustling to try and get like everything set up, like hydration, and like, I got to plan this and I got to plan that. I just need to make sure that all the puzzle pieces are lined up, so I can just go out there and be my absolute best and just hammer down and try and make this thing happen. It's awesome for the fans right now, because we are pretty close, and I think it's going to be really exciting, especially now since all this time off, and we're going to be one of the first sports that are going to be back on TV. So I think that's going to be big, and I'm just excited to be in the position. Honestly, it's not very fun. In the previous years, I wasn't in title contention, and you're just riding around in 8th place or whatever. Not me, and it ain't that fun to be back there. So I'm finally back in the hunt, actually probably more than ever before, honestly, this late in the season. So things are going to be, even though we do have 7 races and it does sound like a lot, it's going to be going by real quick.
What do you think 2 races in a week are like? Does that sound gnarly, or is it not that big a deal? What's your perspective on it?
I can tell you after these 3 weeks are over, I have no idea. I mean, okay. It's interesting just because, racing intensity is always on a whole nother level. Sunday, there's no time at all. Wednesday, Sunday is pretty solid. You got some good time in between there to try and get everything lined up, but it's going to be a sprint. There's no like, let's see what's going to happen, whatnot. Like, I feel like, you got to set the tone, and if you don't set the tone in the first race, you better fight yourself back real quick, because it's going to be one race after another. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. All these things, it's kind of cool about it, honestly, that we have these, I would say, unknown. Yeah. How many races we're doing in 3 weeks. This is all very unique, but that's kind of like what makes this exciting too and fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, look, you've always been the guy to say, like, I don't need to do everything exactly the way some trainer tells me to do it perfectly during the week. You've been a guy that kind of just rolls with it, I feel like, your whole career. So do you think this almost helps you a little bit? I don't think you're a guy that gets spun out super bad. What happened on Tuesday afternoon for lunch ruins you for the weekend. So it seems like you're equipped for this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is honestly almost, I don't know about an ideal situation, but I do feel like I adapt really quick, and it seems like I always kind of come out guns blazing. At least I have that on my side. I've plenty of time after a long off season. I come back, and then, I'm smashing it early in the season. So that side of things, I think it's a little bit in my favor. So it's a good situation for me. It's a good spot to be in. I'm also second. We're close in points. Like, anything can happen. Yep. And I don't really like to be told what I have to do. But as I've grown older, I have read and I'm so interested in the whole like physical side of things when it comes to training, whether that's strength training or cardiovascular training, whatever that may be. So now the fun thing about it is that, I'm the one reaching out to people, like people from Red Bull with Blake, like we're all on an email. Like, I just try to cover all my bases. That's just because I'm super motivated, and I think that's going to be a big mental advantage to my side just because I am not leaving anything on the table.
Oh, man, that's cool to hear. And, it reminds me a little bit, and I'm sure you talked to your teammate, JB, about this. He told me the older he gets, the more he loves all these logistics. Like, he loves traveling internationally and having to figure out flights and time zones and crating up bikes and all this stuff. So it sounds like you're loving that process a little bit, too, the planning part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just when you get older and wiser, you tend to how can I say that? You tend to relax with things a little bit. I mean, like back in the day when I first came over, I was freaked out. I have never been on a plane this much in 2 months of race West Coast series, and I've been in my entire life. So I'm like, oh, dude, this sucks. Time changes, heat, freaking traveling, people all the time. Like I was spun out because I wasn't used to that. Now, now I use the flight time as relaxing. Like I've done this a long time, and I just kind of learned to prepare myself for these situations. And then I think this is just part of being older and being, somewhat of a veteran in the sport, right? Mm-hmm. And learn how to flow with it and keep your stress levels down.
I'm going to ask about a couple other things you've had going on. So last week you had this Red Bull home stretch thing. So somehow you're in like an iRacing type event with like legit professional drivers, also a baseball player. So how did that go? Like, I'm assuming these guys have tons of experience doing this. Did you have any? You kind of held your own in a way.
Yeah, well, the good thing is I kind of, just because of my whole entire life, right, I was wanting to be a jack of all trades, right? So I feel like I've done a lot of variety of sports.
Okay.
Am I a professional in any of them? No, but luckily when I go to St. George, I drive a lot of side-by-sides and stuff. So kind of a similar – so I guess what I'm saying is that I have a little bit of experience at least being in somewhat of a car, unfortunately, and that actually translated over nicely. And I was really surprised with how legit this whole thing is. But having said that, I never get a chance because I'm not a professional, at least not yet. I'm still doing my own profession. But once I retire, maybe I'll go over into four wheels or something. I'm going to have to do some kind of racing or some kind of competing, because otherwise I'll probably drive myself nuts.
Yeah.
My wife. But, those guys, I never get to race those guys in an actual real event. But the cool part is that, Sebastian Loeb, Scott Speed, IndyCar drivers, all that kind of stuff, Travis Pastrana, they're all legends of rally and four-wheel stuff. So, of course, they have a lot of experience. So I tried to get some practice in because, I didn't want to look like an idiot out there. It actually paid off. I feel like I did pretty good. It was more fun than anything else, obviously. But having said that, because we had 3 different events, right? We had one, we were doing the Red Bull Ring, and I was in an NSX regular, kind of like race car, I guess. And then the second race was a rally race. Super difficult because, you turn all the traction control, you turn everything off. So you're sliding all over, and you got to think 3 corners ahead, how you set everything up. So it was really difficult, but so much fun at the same time. And I was blown away by just having a PlayStation, a screen, and a steering wheel, and your controls and everything, how legit it actually was. So that was cool. And then the last race was a go-kart race that was not my favorite. It was on a wet track and everything, and the go-karts, and I didn't practice that at all. And you just looked at the steering wheel and the thing wanted to go right. You know what I mean? Or it was insanely touchy, and then it was like Mario Kart when they drop banana peels and you ride over them all of a sudden. But no, I mean, I got spun in the first race a little bit. Me and Travis always found each other. We were battling back and forth. I got sent off the track once or twice, but caught back up to those guys. And I actually drove off the track myself in the first race. And then I think I finished, I don't know, I may have been 5th or something like that. And the rally race was, I feel like, where I was the best personally. I hung with the top guys, or I went into second and hung with the top guys. Sebastian Loeb is the rally car driver, like the GOAT, you know what I mean? It's like the Ricky Carmichael rally. He has 9 world titles or something like that. But I was pumped. I went back into 3rd or 4th, and me and Travis were battling, of course, the whole time again. But we were hanging with the front 3 guys the entire time, and there was a lot of slicing and dicing going on. I guess what I'm saying, what made it so fun was that none of us were so spread out that we were all driving by ourselves. There were 5 guys literally in the same spot the whole time, and it was going back and forth, and super easy to make a mistake because it's literally like you're driving on ice. So it was a good time. I had a blast. I don't really know what's going on with the well, obviously I'm going to start racing now, so I don't really know if I have time, but yeah. I think it is a 6-week event. And it was something about the last chance call. I don't know. I'm going to have to dig into that and check him out. I would love to do it again. I had a lot of fun. The time-consuming side of things was that setting this whole thing up, right? Like 3 or 4 days before, I was on the call with 15 people just trying to, you need a laptop, you need an iPad, you need an earbud in the left, earbud in the right, because earbud in the left, you talk to the tech team, earbud in the right, you actually talk what's live to all the drivers and then to the 2 commentators, and setting that everything out. Like it was definitely a process. It was time consuming.
Yeah. And it's not like they can just send dudes to your house. Like, we're supposed to be somewhat quarantining. You're not supposed to have like random people. Right.
And like all the rehearsal side of things probably takes a couple hours, because they give you time to be there, make sure everything works. Then you got like an hour off. Then you have rehearsal time, and then you basically drive for 30 minutes or an hour until everybody's set up. Then the actual rehearsal starts. So you're doing these races and whatnot. You're going through the whole thing. And then the next day, the races on East Coast started basically at noon, but I had to clock in at 10:30 my time. And I thought we were just going to be like, okay, clock in, everything works, everybody, whatever, be back at noon. But no, we were driving the whole time. And then qualifying practice, like the whole thing. It was time consuming, but it was a blast. Like, especially also you get to know the other drivers, right? And we're all while we're doing practice and stuff. Menzies drives trucks, Travis drives rally. I think Scott Speed, he drives rally too. And then there's IndyCar drivers, and Sebastian Loeb is a rally driver and everything. So it was just cool to go from track to track and drive with them. You tuck in behind them, you kind of see what they're doing and whatnot. It was a good time.
Yep. That's a Red Bull Homestretch. You can find it on their YouTube channel. We'll put a link on RacerX. And then also, then Red Bull re-releases the Terra Firma that you did 3 years ago, where you reenacted what Jeremy McGrath did out there in California, which still blows my mind. I mean, look, you rode Jeremy McGrath like a month before the Supercross season started. Like, that was a huge risk that you did this.
It was trippy, yeah. I mean, it's an old bike. Of course, the mechanics are awesome, and they do whatever they can to try and get the thing as safe as possible. But you just never know. Having said that, us riders, we go, like, especially on a Supercross track, never mind an outdoor track, it kind of is whatever, because there's a lot of room for air. You don't have to jump perfect with jumps and whatnot. But when I am my 450, you know what the suspension is doing. You're trying to get motor, like all that kind of completely different. It's like on a different planet, going from 2 strokes to 4 strokes or the other way around. So the tough part is, even a month before, you're so anal about, you just want everything to be perfect, and then you're switching over to a super old 2-stroke. I was always confused. I think it was a 94 or a 93 in a frame of a 96. That's why I actually said in the actual Terra Firma, I said, oh, the bike's actually older than me, but then I sounded like an idiot because it was supposed to be a 96, and obviously I was born in 94, so there was a little bit of confusion going on. Anyway, the bike handles and reacts so different, and then you go back to your 450, and all of a sudden you're back to a super fast bike, and everything handles different, even though you're that close to racing, but still far enough out. It's just kind of like stresses you out a little bit, just because you're so used to riding your bike, and you ride that, and you get used to that, and then you have to get used to your bike again. So it was a bit hectic, but it was so much fun. I mean, who gets to say that they have actually ridden Jeremy McGrath bike? You know what I mean? Especially like such a legendary bike.
And that's our interview with Ken Roczen. Yeah, you can go to YouTube. You might want to check it out for a few minutes. Red Bull Homestretch. You can just type that in. It's a virtual race, and they took athletes from all sorts of disciplines, some car racers, obviously a motocross guy like Roczen, even a baseball player, stuff like that. Pretty crazy. And I have a feeling the way video games work, it was leveling the playing field because they were all battling the entire time. So Roczen's been very busy, but now it's time to get back to the business of racing. Same thing for the privateers. We'll talk to Cade Clason here in a second, but I just want to remind about Yoshimura exhaust system that Ken Roczen uses on his motorcycle. And you can get one just like it. Go to yoshimura-rd.com. They have that Honda Works Edition 450, that like super top of the line 450 motocross bike you can buy. It has Ken Roczen's graphics and numbers, and it has a Yoshimura exhaust system on it. And also you've got yoshimuracycling.com, where you can get the new Chaleo flat pedal made in the USA. And another shout out, if you're going to subscribe to RacerX, which I recommend because it's cheap and effective, do it by going to racerxonline.com/Weege. That's WEEGE. I want the credit for your subscription so Steve Mathis doesn't get it because, well, I want to beat Steve Mathis. Wouldn't you? So now let's switch over to Cade Clason. I wanted to get privateer perspective on this because everyone cries for the privateers. Everyone feels bad for the privateers. We understand. So is this a hardship? These guys having to race in one city for 3 weeks and twice a week. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We know if you're Ken Roczen, you want to go racing because you're 3 points behind in the championship, so you need to get some racing in. If they had handed the title over after Daytona, Ken Roczen would have lost. So racing more is great for Ken Roczen. But what about someone on a completely different side of the scale? So here's Cade Clason, and a quick reminder, Cade was the rider who was suspended due to the anti-doping test by the FIM at the end of 2017, could not race 2018, 2019. In a nutshell, here was his case. He takes Adderall due to attention deficit disorder. Apparently you can get a clearance for that, what they call a therapeutic use exemption. He sent a form in to get that. They sent an email back to him and said the form wasn't filled out right. He said, okay, I'll fill it out again. He sends it in, doesn't get a response, thinking, okay, this time they didn't reject me, so I must be fine. So then he goes to take the anti-doping test. This is at the New Jersey Supercross in 2017. And they said, are you on any prescription meds? And he says, yes, I'm on Adderall. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're not allowed to take that. And he's like, I am. I sent in the forms to get a therapeutic use exemption. And they said, well, we don't have anything like that on file. And Cade's like, wait, you don't? So boom, 2-year suspension for Cade. So this was his comeback year in Supercross. He did race in Canada, Motocross, the last couple of years. It's been a rough season for him, even just making the main events as he tries to make his comeback. So that's part of the story with Clason. And the other story is, of course, how will this Utah thing work for a privateer? Let's find out.
So that's why I want to talk to you first. From your perspective, what do you think of having racing back?
I mean, I'm excited. There's definitely a few quirks that we still got to figure out. I know there's been a lot of speculation on like where we have to stay and like how our payout's going to be and different things like that. But I heard we're supposed to hear today by tomorrow for sure. Those kind of things. So, I mean, it's gonna be strange. But I mean, it's better than sitting on the couch and not making any money. There's plenty of people out there that have nothing right now still. So I'm pretty grateful that, we get to, go spend 3.5 weeks in a pretty cool city. It's one of my favorite cities. So I'm pretty pumped that, we get to go race in such a cool place. I'm not pumped on the elevation, but that's how it is.
Yeah, that's right. So the way it's going to work is there's 3 to 4 days between races because we're racing Sunday through Wednesday. Now they have said you don't have to all stay in one hotel. They'll give you a list of hotels. But you could stay in motorhomes or campers. You could rent a house. That's all good. But the catch is everyone has to, when you show up in Utah, everyone has to take a COVID test. You have to be negative, and that has to be 48 hours before the race. So there's really not enough time to leave the state and then come back and make it to another race. So everyone's not technically stuck there, but you're pretty much stuck there. So do you know at least that much, and have you thought about, oh, man, I'm in Utah the whole time? Have you coped with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pumped on the whole staying in Utah thing. I'm not too worried about it. I see. That's kind of where I'm weary. I don't know where we're required to stay. If we can, rent an Airbnb or stuff like that. I know they said they're going to try and help us with hotels or something. But I have a few places that I've kind of looked at and trying to stay. So I'm not super worried about where. It's just like the price. If we have to stay in a hotel or something like that, that sucks because that's kind of a big bill. I get a little help from the team with hotels and stuff, but a lot of guys don't. Yeah. So, that's a big struggle for a lot of guys, but staying in Utah isn't a problem, especially when we're racing twice a week. You might be able to practice between the Wednesday and the Sunday, but between the Sunday and the Wednesday, you don't really want to ride. Unless you're trying to ride, the day before the second race, the race on Wednesday, I'm saying. So, riding twice a week racing twice a week really isn't that big of a deal because those are big days anyways. So, I mean, it's not ideal, obviously, but I mean, it's not that big of an issue either. I think some people are kind of making it more than it needs to be.
Yeah. So what do you think? Are you thinking 2 days a week, the racing is all the riding I need? Or are you like, man, I'd like to get a practice day or a test day mixed in here?
I mean, if I could get a day in between Wednesday and Sunday, if we could ride on Friday would be the most ideal day because there's a day in between the race and a day in between, both races basically.
Right.
So that would be the really only day that's ideal to practice, because riding the day before a race is a struggle because you're spending all day practicing and driving, and then you got to come back and get everything ready for the next day. And it's just such a hassle.
Right.
Go through that process. That's fine. But for me, I mean, that would be the only day of the week other than the races. Cause I mean, during the race season anyways, we only ride 3 days a week anyways. So it's not that big of a change. But yeah, I mean, if you're trying to test something or try new things, then that's really your only option, I feel like.
So if you can't figure that out, is it like really bad to only race and not be able to get in any practice days during this whole thing? Or would that be a disaster, or would that be like, not so bad?
It's not that big of a disaster because you have to think there's only 40 guys. So for guys kind of like myself, qualifying isn't quite as important. I can go out and just kind of practice. I don't have to really worry about qualifying because there's only 40 of us. So you can go out and use both your qualifying sessions as, kind of like a test session, if that makes sense. Because yeah, there's no consequence if I'm 10 seconds off the pace because I was out there just trying to like work on my bike and stuff like that. Like obviously I'd rather qualify, as high up as possible to get a good gate pick to try to set myself up for the heat race. But, if you're having major issues and I need to pull into the mechanics area 10 times, like that's kind of the only time you can do it. Well, then you have to, give and take a little bit.
Do you think in some ways you've raced all over the world, you've raced international stuff, you've been on all sorts of different teams. I'm sure you haven't always had the ideal perfect setup going into every race you've ever done. Do you almost feel like that gives you a little advantage?
A little bit, yeah. I've definitely been in some sticky situations. But I mean, that's just how it goes. I mean, I'm not really concerned about this at all. Going in, I feel like probably the factory dudes are the most stressed about it because it's so weird for them. But I mean, for a privateer, like every weekend is a little bit different. It's not like you just show up and, it's everything's smooth sailing. Like every weekend you have, hurdles to get over. So for guys like myself, it's pretty easy for us to adjust. Whereas like probably guys like Kenny and Eli, they have a super, meticulous routine that they go through every single weekend. So for them, it's probably a big change, especially not being able to go home and go through the ritual of training and all that stuff. A lot of the privateers, they drive to all the races. Mm-hmm. So for them, it's convenient to be able to just say, I'm sure there's going to be more than one guy just staying in their van all week.
There you go. That's self-quarantine. There's only room for one guy in this van, so it'll work out.
Yeah, he's good. So, I mean, you don't got to worry about it then. You don't even have to leave the parking lot. It's like free money, basically. You're just staying at the track.
Let's talk about the money thing. I was surprised when this came out. I expected every fan to be like, sweet, Supercross is back. But I heard a lot of people saying, like, these poor riders, they're being forced to do this. They have to race twice a week. What I think a lot of people don't realize is when the race stops, the money stops coming in. So can you explain maybe how it works? You don't have to get too super detailed if you can't. But how do the financials work when you're not racing compared to supposedly now we'll be racing again?
Yeah, it's kind of a struggle. I do a pretty good job of trying to save money. I'm kind of like you, Weege. I'm kind of cheap. So I'm okay in that standpoint. But yeah, it's a struggle. Like, I mean, none of the sponsors are paying any money. So then if like the team owes you money, or, I know plenty of guys that ride for like privateer teams that were like, yeah, I'm super backdated now because the team has no money because the sponsors aren't paying the money. So
right.
It's a struggle for sure. And then you're not getting bonuses for the races. You're not getting purse money. There's all these things that you miss out on that a lot of people don't realize that we get, that's how we make our living. We don't get like this steady paycheck every single week. If we get hurt, we get nothing. So it can become, a real struggle. So, to not race for basically, I don't know what it's been like, almost probably like 8 weeks or something. To not make any money that whole time is a struggle. So it's definitely a bummer. Obviously, like I said earlier, we're going to take a little bit of a pay cut, but Feld's doing their best to kind of help us compensate with that, with helping us out with hotels. Or I actually heard that they might be helping us out with the entry fees too, which would be a huge help, because that entry fees, it's $200 a weekend. So, I mean, that would basically cover, the 20% or whatever they're going to take out of our pay, which, I mean, again, would be totally fine.
Yeah. So really, you're not making money while those races aren't happening. Is that really what it came down to?
Basically, yeah. I mean, I've done some odd end stuff. I've been training some kids. So, I mean, I've been making a little bit of money, but nowhere near what I would be making if I was racing.
Okay. Now, the backstory to this is your comeback Supercross because of the super weirdo suspension that you got from WADA, 3 years ago almost at this point?
Yeah. I mean, I got suspended at the beginning or at the end of 2017, I think. So, yeah, it's been, 3.5 years, whatever. So
how has it gone here, the return? So you couldn't race 2018, couldn't race 2019. You're back in 2020. How have you felt, at least, being back in Supercross racing?
I mean, I felt okay. My speed just hasn't really been there. I don't know if it's the speed that I haven't had there. I kind of did the math, and I'm actually closer to the front guys now than I used to be. The problem is there's a ton of privateers that are closer than I am. So it's like I kind of miss out on that part. So it looks like I'm really struggling, but I feel like I was getting way better as the season went on. I was getting closer and closer to where I needed to be, and it just kind of hit a bad spot in the season, and we weren't able to keep going. So I'm hoping I'll be able to pick up right where we left off. I've been riding. Still, I took plenty of time off after where Indy was supposed to be. I don't think I rode for 5 weeks or something. So, but now I've been back riding. I have my buddies to ride with here in Arizona. So I hope we can pick back up where we kind of left off, and keep making progress. That's all that I can really ask for.
Yeah, because you were racing in Canada and other places and things like that. So in one way, you could be like, well, he couldn't race Supercross, but he's still racing. But when you actually got back to American Supercross, was it a huge jump from racing motocross in Canada, or was it not? Was it I was still racing the whole time? Was it a big jump, or was it not, to get back into Supercross?
No, it was a big jump for sure.
Okay.
I even coming back, I was racing all the nationals in Canada, and we came down and I did Unadilla in Indiana. Even just riding those, it was a completely different, type of racing. It was way more intense. There's so many more fast guys, and then you get to Supercross and it's it's its own world anyways. So it was kind of an eye opener. I kind of just molded my way into it from when I was a rookie. So you just kind of get used to it, and then you leave it for a while, and then you come back and you're like, oh man, this is way more difficult than it looks.
Okay. So work in progress then? Is that why you think you're getting better? Is that what it is? It just comes down to more racing back in?
Yeah. I mean, definitely a work in progress. Like I said, the beginning of the season at A1, I was way off. I thought I was going to be way closer than I was. And then, we were getting better and better. I think we were 20th in qualifying in Atlanta. And like I said, just getting better and better. So that's all I could ask for, really. We're trying, the effort level's there from not just me, but my team, trying to make me improve. That they know that the potential is there. It's just doing it on a Saturday.
Bro, give us some background. What is this? What is this team? What is this team? Who runs it? Why is it on the road and all that?
It's just a privateer effort. They're based out of Montreal. They've been growing and growing the last couple of years. Our team manager, Julian, he's kind of a one-man band. Each guy kind of has their own mechanic and stuff. But Julian kind of runs the entire show by himself. He does a good job. Sometimes, like I said, it's a one-man show. So sometimes it's a struggle, stuff's delayed, but that's how it goes. Like I said, it's a privateer team. And it's really, really new. It's the first year they've ever had a semi. There's 5 guys on it, so there's plenty of stuff to do. But I enjoy it. Our biggest issue right now is, if he's going to be able to get across the border to get here, so sorry, man, there's gnats all over out here. So I'm like, but
back to the Montreal area when this shut down.
Yeah, they had to. They were supposed to go home and quarantine. So he went home right after Indy. and then they had to quarantine because they came into the country for like 14 days. He wasn't allowed to leave his house. So then he, that's over with now, and he's able to move around, but the border's still closed. So he's talked to like Pelletier and some guys at the AMA, and they've written some letters saying that they're needed over here. So they're going to try and come across this weekend. So hopefully they can get in and we can go racing. Our bikes are luckily in the country, where they're actually parked at my grandparents' business. They parked the rig there when the border closed because they were close to Indy. So we're really hoping that, he can get across and then they can get the rig there and stuff. And, it's easy for them because once they get the rig there, it doesn't have to move for 3.5 weeks. So it's really a cheaper expense for them.
Yeah. So, okay, the border crossing might be shady if that all works out. Were there any other worries? Like the whole time was your team manager, team owner saying, oh yeah, I'm racing? Or was there ever like a moment of like, oh, we might run out of money, we might not be able to do this? Or did you pretty much know that they were going to be back if we?
It wasn't really ever too much of a concern. Like obviously there was, concerns like worrying about it. But in reality, this is almost a cheaper way to do 7 rounds than if we did it normal.
True.
So, and, everyone kind of had like another job too that they could go back to, like my mechanic and Julian as well. Like they all do other stuff. It's not like they only rely on this. So they went home and they kept working. And now we're able to go back racing. So they're able to come back and do it. So it's definitely a struggle to kind of plan out. It sucks kind of having to jump back and forth between like one way to make money for them and back to another. So besides that, they never really said like, hey, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. They've talked about not bringing the rig, like just bringing, like a box truck or something like that and some easy ups because it would be cheaper. But we'll see.
Yeah. If they can't get over the border, then that might be what you're forced to do.
Well, if they can't get over the border, I'm flying home, getting a box truck and driving my bike out. So it's, I've done that drive plenty of times. So, we'll know later this week what we got to do.
Yeah. You live in Arizona. Then I saw you were back at Club MX. We hung out for a little bit. And then where's the grandparents' business? Where's that?
So they're from Ohio, where I'm originally from. So after the rig was in Indy, so they just, kind of drove it up, cause they're not too far from the border. They met up and then they all drove home. So, if all else fails, and Carnell, he's one of my teammates. He's from Ohio too. So we'll just carpool, I'll fly up there and I'll help him drive. We'll just carpool it out to Salt Lake City.
There you go. I mean, it sounds like this, like whatever, man, you're getting a chance to race again and get paid again. So if there's some details that you got to work out, it doesn't seem like it's bothering you that much because at least it means you're racing. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it could be way worse. We could not be racing. I could have no money all summer because my plan isn't to race the nationals. So it's pretty awesome that, we get this opportunity to go racing. I know it might be a little soon. I know some guys would rather do it in the fall, especially guys that were hurt and like got surgeries and stuff like that. But, besides that, it's not too big of a deal to me.
All right. Good to hear. You want to throw in some shout outs real quick, Privateer Life, before you get to do it on an actual race?
Privateer Life. I mean, the whole PRMX team, like I said, Julian does a really good job. We have a whole list of sponsors, like Wasner, Just One, that put a lot in that, some people don't realize like all that money comes from those guys. Julian can't put it all in himself. So it's, and Julian runs PRMX. It's like a distributing website in Canada. So it's, they do a really good job. So, I mean, I got to give it all up to them. If it wasn't for him, really, I would probably wouldn't have gone racing this year because I didn't have the money to do it on my own. So it's a big shout out to him, obviously.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're circling wagons one way or another. I suppose we're all going to be back at a race in like less than 2 weeks.
So you're coming, right? You're coming, right? You're in? You got the invite?
I'm on. Yes, they told me there are 12 media people approved. I'm in the top 12.
Yeah. All right. You and Steve. You and Steve. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Dude, it must have hurt them so bad, but the people at Feld, they had to say, yeah, Pulp MX is very popular.
He is. He's a big deal now. I remember like maybe back in the day, he was like, bottom of the bucket. Now he's like top tier now.
Oh, how much does that hurt? the folks at Feld to have to say, yes, we better make sure Steve Mathis is on the list to be able to come to these races. And I'm on it too. I'm not sure how many I'll go to. I am at least going to the first 2. It is amazing to think that it will take 8 days in Utah for me to go to 2 races, but that's the timing. You have to come in essentially 3 days in advance so you can get the test and then wait 48 hours and then go to the race. And then there's a break between races. And what I'm actually most curious about from my perspective is I don't even know if I'll be able to interview people or talk to people anyway, even if I am there. At a Supercross, I spend probably 80% of the day going into the team trucks, talking to people, getting information, angles, scoops, info. I'm not allowed to do any of that. We're not allowed to go into the team trucks at all. So it leaves interview time, which we might be able to do at the track. But my big thing is that I might go all the way out there, stay there for 8 days, and all I can do is sit in the press box by myself and then interview the riders with a Zoom call or a phone call, of which I could do from home anyway. So it's anyone's guess, but I'm telling you, media is not the number one priority right now. It's riders, teams, rules, making the race happen, and then getting it on television. That's the most important thing. Having a race, having it count, getting it on TV. I will take a back seat. I'll just show up and I'll just do my thing, whatever that thing is. I'm glad to see these riders are pumped because, look, man, they're racers. You want to hear Ken Roczen say I'm motivated. You want to hear Cade Clason say, whatever, man, I'll figure it out. You want people to come in full steam ahead, and I think it's happening. We'll have a lot more interviews ramping up to this Salt Lake City resumption of Supercross. And they will all be brought to you by Yoshimura right here on the Exhaust Podcast. Go to yoshimura-rd.com and yoshimuracycling.com, and also go to racerxonline.com/weege, WEEGE, and subscribe to the magazine, and I'll get the credit. All right, see you soon.